years ago, in a small town called Maybrook, a teacher named Justine walked into her classroom one morning and found it completely empty, except for one boy, Alex Lilly. You're watching CineDigest, and this is Movie Recapped. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome stories. The night before, at exactly 2:17 a.m., the other 17 students had all left their homes, running into the darkness with their arms stretched out, and completely vanished. Security systems all over town caught footage of them running, but there was no sign of anyone kidnapping them. The police questioned Alex and Justine over and over, asking every possible question, but neither of them knew anything. The school was shut down for an entire month while the investigation went on, but the searches in the area turned up nothing. When it was finally time for the school to reopen, the whole town gathered for a meeting organized by the principal, Marcus. Most of the townspeople blamed Justine, saying she caused the kids to disappear or did something to make them leave. Justine tried to explain that she loved her students deeply, but the parents started yelling at her. Marcus stepped in to defend her, and they accused him of being in on it. One of the detectives had to escort Justine out to protect her from the angry crowd. Later, she went to a supermarket to buy some alcohol. She'd been drinking a lot since the tragedy. Suddenly, she got a call from an unknown number. When she answered, a voice threatened her, so she hung up right away. As she was leaving, a homeless man named James asked her for change, but she ignored him and walked away. That night, Justine heard her doorbell ring, but she was too scared to answer. She looked through the peephole, saw no one, and then someone knocked on the door. When she finally went outside, she was shocked to see the word witch spray-painted on her car. The next morning, she tried to scrub it off, but couldn't, so she had to drive to school with the graffiti still there. Marcus told her to take an indefinite leave and focus on her mental health. Alex had been moved to another class and was doing fine. She asked to speak to him, but Marcus refused, saying she was crossing professional boundaries, like when she hugged a crying student or gave one a ride home after he missed the bus. Justine went back to her car in tears. Then she went to the police station to report the vandalism and the threatening calls. There, she ran into her ex-boyfriend, Paul, and the moment was awkward. That night, they met again at a bar where Paul said he was worried about her. She assured him she was fine. He also mentioned he'd split up with his wife, and the two ended up going back to Justine's place and sleeping together. The next morning, as she drove him home, she told him she didn't think the police were doing enough. Later, she went back to school and waited for the bus that took the kids home. When Alex got off, she followed him all the way to his house. She knocked, but no one answered. All the windows were covered with newspaper. Worried, she climbed the fence and peered through a small gap between the papers and froze when she saw two figures inside. She stumbled backward and made some noise, but luckily no one heard her. When she looked again, she saw Alex's parents sitting completely still on the couch. Panicked, she called Marcus and told him what she saw, but he yelled at her, saying she was spying on the kid. Later, at the supermarket, Justine was suddenly attacked by Donna, Paul's wife, who had found out he'd been with her the night before. Justine tried to explain that Paul told her he wasn't married, but Donna cursed at her and poured alcohol all over her, until a store worker dragged her out. That night, Justine had a nightmare. She was back at school, walking into her classroom, and all the kids had their faces flat on the desks. Suddenly, Alex lifted his head, his face painted like a creepy clown, and smiled wickedly. Justine woke up screaming. She heard a strange noise in the house, looked out the window, but saw nothing. When she went back to bed, she screamed again. There was a red-haired woman standing on the ceiling, staring at her, before vanishing in a flash. The next day, she waited for Alex after school and asked if he was okay. He said yes and walked away. When she tried to follow him, he yelled at her to stay away and ran to his house. She kept knocking and ringing the bell, but no one answered. She ended up sitting in her car outside the house all day until she fell asleep. That evening, someone came out of the house, approached her car, and cut off a lock of her hair. At the same time, one of the parents, Archer, had been struggling with severe depression ever since his son disappeared. He spent his days rewatching surveillance footage, barely functioning at work, and constantly visiting the police station for updates. But Captain Lunch told him there was still no new leads. Archer was convinced Justine knew something, but Lunch insisted there was no evidence linking her to the case. At the school meeting, Archer had been one of the first to yell at Justine. He was even the one who wrote "witch" on her car. His depression got worse and he started sleeping in his son's room. One night, he dreamed he was asleep and realized he was dreaming. He heard a noise and saw the front door open on its own. He ran downstairs and saw his son running outside, so he chased after him but suddenly found himself back inside the house. The boy ran straight into him, and above the house, a glowing figure appeared in the sky with the number 217 on it. Archer went back to his son's room crying, apologizing for not being a better father. Then, his son's face transformed into the same red-haired woman, and Archer woke up in horror. The next day, Archer noticed a tower in the woods and had an idea. He grabbed a map, drew a line between his house and the direction his son had run, and started visiting the other parents whose kids had disappeared. One refused to show him their footage, but another agreed. He noticed the direction each child ran, drew another line, and soon realized that all the paths led to the same place. As he headed there, he saw Justine at a gas station and started yelling at her. At the same moment, Justine saw Marcus running with blood all over his face and his arms stretched out like the kids. He suddenly tackled her to the ground and started choking her. Archer tried to pull him off, but Marcus overpowered him. Justine managed to run and hide inside the store, but Marcus followed her. Archer kicked him off, and the two struggled until Marcus got him in a chokehold. Rewinding a bit, earlier that night, Paul was on patrol when he spotted James acting suspiciously and decided to follow him. He saw him trying to break into a house and called out to him. James ran. A chase followed, first by car, then on foot. Paul caught him, handcuffed him, and James tried to explain he was just trying to get into his own house because he'd lost his keys. While searching him, Paul accidentally pricked his finger on one of James's used needles. Furious, he punched him, then went back to his car to get the first aid kit. When he checked the body cam footage, everything had been recorded. Frustrated, Paul decided to let James go, telling him to leave town. Later, at the station, Lunch told Paul everything would be fine as long as James didn't file a complaint. That same night, Paul went out with Justine, and when he came home the next morning, his wife Donna had come back early. She could tell something was off and figured out what happened. Later at work, Paul saw James hanging around outside the station and yelled at him. James ran, and Paul turned off his body cam before getting into his car to chase him. Rewinding again, James had been living in a tent in the woods, surviving off drugs and whatever he could steal from unlocked cars to sell. One day, he came across the Lily's house. All the windows were covered with newspaper, and the mailbox was overflowing, so he thought it was abandoned. He climbed the fence and went in through a window. Upstairs, he found a cluttered room, then went down to the living room and froze when he saw Alex's parents sitting motionless on the couch, their faces covered in strange wounds. They didn't react at all, even when he got close, so he kept robbing the place. Then he heard noises coming from upstairs, but ignored them, until he heard something from the basement. When he went down to check, he was horrified to find all the missing kids standing silently in the dark. All of them turned to face him at once. Terrified, he ran as fast as he could and pushed furniture to block the door. At that moment, Alex's parents stood up and started walking toward him, so he bolted out of the house. Later, at a pawn shop, while selling the stolen stuff, he noticed a missing poster offering a huge reward for information about the missing kids. He bought drugs with the money, then called the police claiming he knew where the children were. The officer didn't believe him and told him to come down to the station to talk. When James was about to go inside the house again, Paul saw him and shouted, so James ran into the woods. There, he was startled to see the red-haired woman waving at him. Panicking, he rushed back to his tent. Moments later, he saw a shadow outside and attacked it with his needles. But it turned out to be Paul, who dragged him out of the tent and pointed his gun at him. James saved himself by yelling that he knew where the kids were. Paul believed him and followed his directions, leading them to the Lily's house. Paul went inside after someone opened the door, while James, terrified, watched from the car. Hours passed, and when night came, Paul finally came out, walking like he was possessed. He rushed toward the car, dragged James out, and growled like a beast. James screamed for help, but no one heard him before he was pulled into the house. Let's go back a little in time. Marcus was at the supermarket when Justine called him and told him what she saw. He promised her he'd talk to Alex's parents and check things out himself. But on the day of the meeting, the one who showed up was that red-haired woman. She said she was Alex's aunt and her name was Glatz, claiming Alex's parents were sick and couldn't come. Marcus told her there was an official report about the case and that he needed to speak with the legal guardians himself or notify the authorities. The next day, Glatz went to Marcus's house and asked for a glass of water, but said it had to be in a bowl, not a cup. Then she asked if he'd called the authorities, and when he said no, she pulled out a ribbon she had stolen from his office and tied it around a strange-looking tree branch, soaking it with her own blood. Marcus's husband, Terry, stepped closer to help her with a cloth for the wound, but Glatz suddenly cut off a lock of his hair. Marcus tried to call the police, but Glatz rang the small bell she carried. The sound threw him into some kind of trance. His phone dropped from his hand, his body started shaking. Glatz wrapped Harry's hair around the stick and snapped it in half. All of a sudden, Marcus lunged at Terry, strangling him while vomiting some weird black liquid on his face, then smashed his head several times until he killed him. He didn't stop until Glatz threw the stick into the bowl. She then washed it, removed Terry's hair, and replaced it with Justine's hair, before snapping it again. That's what made Marcus lose his mind and become obsessed with killing Justine. At the gas station, the final showdown happened. After Archer fell to the ground, Marcus ran inside the store looking for Justine. She tried to get into the staff room, but it was locked, so he cornered her. At that moment, Archer charged at Marcus and slammed him into a fridge, giving Justine a chance to run to her car. Marcus smashed the window trying to stop her, but she managed to start the engine and drive off while he ran after her. Archer followed in his car and, on the road, saw Marcus get hit by another vehicle. The driver screamed when she saw his head splattered on the ground. Later at the hospital, Archer told the police everything that happened. As he was leaving, he saw Justine waiting to thank him for saving her life. After what he witnessed, he no longer believed she was guilty. He showed her the map he'd drawn and said Marcus ran exactly like the missing kids. Justine instantly realized that the mark pointed straight to Alex's house. Time goes back again, before the disappearance. Alex was a shy, lonely boy, often mocked by his classmates. His parents were kind people who loved each other deeply. One day, they told him his Aunt Glatz would move in because she was sick. She arrived around midnight, and the next morning Alex peeked into her room. He saw a red wig and a small tree with twisted branches. Glatz was lying there, awake and staring at him. Alex quickly shut the door. After school, nobody came to pick him up, so he walked home. When he got there, he found his parents sitting at the dinner table, motionless, talking in a cold, robotic tone. Glatz appeared, saying they were fine. Alex got scared, refused to let her touch him, and splashed some water on his dad's face, but his father just wiped it off like nothing happened. Glatz yelled at him and sent him to his room without dinner. The next day, he saw them again at the table, red-eyed, still, not moving. Glatz warned him not to tell anyone at school that she lived with them or that his parents were resting. To frighten him, she broke a tree branch over a bowl of water and made his mom and dad grab forks and stab themselves in the face. He tried to stop them but couldn't. They only stopped when Glatz threw the branch into the bowl. She told him if he ever spoke, she'd do much worse. After that, he noticed she had cleared out his parents' bedroom and sat on the floor doing strange rituals. He was the one who cooked and fed them. Days passed like that, going to school, shopping, then feeding his parents. One night, he heard her calling his name. When he went in, he found her lying on the floor, vomiting into a pot. She said she was very sick, that his parents had tried to cure her but failed, and that the only way to heal was if he brought her something that belonged to each of his classmates. The next day at school, during gym class, he sneaked into the classroom and stole their name tags from the cubbies. Justine caught him and asked what he was doing. He said he'd forgotten something. She mentioned she'd noticed how quiet he had become lately and offered to talk, but he said he was fine. Back home, he left the tags at her door. That night, strange noises woke him. He went downstairs and saw Glatz snapping the name tags into a bowl, spitting into it, throwing in a matchstick, and ringing her bell. At that exact moment, all the kids left their houses and ran toward his home. When the investigation began, Glatz put makeup on Alex's father's face and told the police he'd had a stroke and couldn't speak, claiming she was taking care of them. Knowing they'd searched the house, she made Alex clean up and remove newspapers from the windows. Then, she cut the kids' hair to make a spell that hid them in the woods for a while, and Alex became the one who fed them and his parents. One day, he came back from school and saw a police car outside. Inside, officers Paul and James were standing in the middle of the room. He ran upstairs to hide, but Glatz stopped him, saying they'd be leaving town tomorrow and warning him not to cross the salt line by her door. His parents stood guard over it. A little later, Justine and Archer arrived and parked outside. They saw Paul come out, wave at them, then go back in. They decided to follow him, while Alex watched from the window. Inside, Paul gestured for them to come closer. Justine accidentally stepped over the salt line, and suddenly, James attacked Archer. No matter how hard he hit him, nothing worked. Paul chased Justine into the kitchen. She threw a pan at his face, but he didn't flinch and jumped on the table to grab her. She slashed his face with a peeler, but he didn't feel pain and kept strangling her. Upstairs, Alex ignored the screams and stepped over the salt line. That moment, his parents broke free from the trance and ran after him. He locked himself in his room, but they started pounding the door until they broke it. He escaped through the bathroom that led to the hallway, then ran into Glatz's room. Hearing them breaking in, he grabbed a branch from the tree and ran to the inner bathroom. He cut his finger and smeared blood on the branch. Meanwhile, Archer kept fighting James, who just kept getting up again. James finally knocked Archer down near the basement door, where Archer saw all the missing kids standing there. Justine grabbed Paul's gun and shot him in the neck. He didn't die, and black liquid poured from the wound. She had to shoot him in the head to finish him, then went down to the basement and shot James too. Archer searched through the kids, desperate to find his son, when Glatz suddenly appeared and snatched the chain from his neck. Moments later, Archer attacked Justine from behind, choking her while Glatz watched. At the same time, Alex took a lock of hair from Justine's wig, wrapped it around the branch, and broke it. Instantly, all the kids rushed out of the basement and charged toward Glatz, who ran out of the house. The kids shattered windows and doors, chasing her, while the neighbors stood frozen in shock, watching her run with the kids climbing fences and breaking glass behind her. Finally, one of the girls jumped on her, knocking her to the ground, and all the children tore her apart until she was dead. With her death, Archer, Alex, and his parents were freed from the curse.
Justine went upstairs and found Alex hugging his parents. Archer arrived, and father and son reunited. After everything, Alex's parents were admitted to a psychiatric hospital, and Alex went to live with his kind aunt. The other kids returned to their families, though it took them a long time before they could speak again. And that's the end of today's movie. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to CineDigest for more amazing stories with Movie Recapped.